Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Investing in Menstrual Health Makes Good Business Sense, period. I'm your host today, Deborah Malfi, a technical advisor from PSI Europe and a women's health and health technology consultant. And this webinar is brought to you by Days for Girls and PSI Europe as part of the Period Positive Workplace Initiative. Before we dive into what our speakers have to share with us today, I'd like to do a quick run on some handy information and purpose of this webinar. Yeah. To begin with, this session will be recorded, so please keep that in mind, and we will share the recording at the end of this session or earliest next week. Regarding the question and answers, please share your Q&As please share your questions in the Q&A box, and we will get to them at the end of this webinar, where our presenters will give you your responses. And also, please introduce yourself and text your comments in the chat box. Feel free to introduce yourself and your contact details, etc. Thank you very much. To get to it about this webinar, the main aim of this webinar is to create period positive workplaces. And how do we do that? We are going to start this conversation so that we can normalize menstruation in the workplace, destigmatize and remove discrimination amongst people who menstruate in the workplace. We also want to help employers understand how menstrual health impacts their employees' work and productivity. And we will also get some research insights from some of our presenters as well, and how these findings can impact self-care and productivity in the workplace. A quick run on the agenda today. We are going to have a 45 minutes webinar session, and we're going to start it off with Dr. Ekua Yankah, who's going to give us the opening remarks. And then we will dive a bit into the research focused on menstruation from Dr. Houghton. And Pooja Singh from PSI India is going to shed some light on how employers can understand menstrual health and how it impacts their employees' work. After Pooja, of course, it will be followed by Neville Okwaro, who is our menstrual health champion, and he's going to share his journey on how businesses can achieve menstrual equity. And of course, he's going to dive into a teaser of the Period Positive Workplace Initiative. And Saraya Toronto will close out, as she's from Morgan Stanley, and that's one of our early adopters of the Period Positive Workplace Initiative. And she's going to share the commitment from Morgan Stanley in implementing the Period Positive Workplace. After that, we will then get to your questions from the Q&A box and close the session. To start with, you've met me, Dr. Deborah, that's me, and I'm going to introduce our very first speaker, Dr. Ekua Yankah, PhD. Dr. Ekua Yankah is an Afro-German public health scientist. She's also a sexual health expert and senior consultant with Brands on a Mission, which is based in Kenya. And she's also currently the head of secretariat for the award-winning National Business Compact on coronavirus in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Dr. Ekua, please welcome as you give us your opening remarks. Thank you.
Welcome to everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm also on the board of PSI Europe, so it's a real pleasure to be here today. And on behalf of Brands on a Mission and Miriam Sidibe, who was on leave, so she couldn't speak here. So I will be speaking for Miriam and also for everybody at Brands on a Mission. So we are Brands on a Mission. We are a B Corp and purpose consultancy that helps brands and organizations accelerate their impact in global health and well-being towards the SDGs. And the first point I would like to make is that the private sector has a very important role to play in helping us achieve the SDGs. And that's something that we do at Brands on a Mission. We work on the intersection between the public sector and the private sector. And we have succeeded at founding and managing multi-stakeholder platforms such as the award-winning National Business Compact on coronavirus that operated in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. It's a program that has concluded. In addition to working with other clients in the for-profit sector, predominantly brands. But we work with these clients across a variety of health and well-being issues, including nutrition, menstrual hygiene, gender-based violence, tackling the harmful consumption of alcohol and economic resilience, amongst many more. But the point I would like to make here is that while we often look to the outside and to be involved in the development world, it's also very important to look towards the inside, right? Charity really begins at home. So my second point is that women and girls have their rightful place in the formal and informal job sector. And just to give you some data, so the upliftment of women stimulates the economy. So increasing expenditures for reproductive, maternal, newborn, and child health services by just $5 per capita per year to the year 2035 could yield up to 9 times that value in economic and social benefits. So including greater GDP growth through increased productivity. So we all know the paid and unpaid work that women are involved in. And so I see the workplace as having, being a very important contributor to also creating that type of environment that makes women flourish. And so today, it will be a pleasure to hear from some real life examples from companies such as Morgan Stanley, who have experience in creating period positive workspaces. And that should really be an inspiration for all of us. So welcome and thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ekua, for the beautiful insights. I cannot agree more. The private sector has a big role to play in making menstrual health equity a success. I mean, today we see that menstruating people account for a significant and growing proportion of about 1.2 billion menstruating employees, with women making about half of that of the labor market globally. So of course, it is important that we have these conversations and we act upon it, because this is very beneficial for both social and financial aspects of women. Well, after these opening remarks, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lauren Houghton, who is our next speaker. Dr. Lauren Houghton is a biosocial epidemiologist. She's also a researcher and assistant professor from the Columbia University Mailman School of Public Health. She has done quite some great research on menstrual health in the workplace and breast cancer. And yeah, you can take the floor, Dr. Lauren, please.
Thank you so much. Can you stop sharing your screen? Because it says I can't share mine until.
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks.
Dr. Houghton, are you able to share your screen now?
I am just getting there, just making sure I'm doing the right one. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, great. Great. So thank you. You see the right screen. You don't see my notes page?
Correct.
Okay, great. So thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be with all of you here today. What I'm going to talk about is the current research of menstrual health briefly, and then get into ways that both employees and employers can make life for menstruators more productive and healthy. So menstruation is understudied and considered noise in biomedical research. So only since 2016 has the United States National Institutes of Health policies actually demanded the inclusion of biological sex in the studies that it funds. Historically, the complexities of the menstrual cycle are considered major barriers to the inclusion of women in clinical trials. And largely this is because of how we frame the menstrual cycle. So when we think about the menstrual life course, there are periods of irregularity. This is, after a menstruator reaches her first period at menarche, during pregnancy and after during the lactation period. And then of course, perimenopause is defined by irregularity. And oftentimes, menstruators that are in these periods of irregularity are excluded even further from research. When we look at the underlying hormones, there is also great variation depending on the menstrual cycle day. So for example, during the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle, which is the first day of bleeding till about day 14, progesterone, shown here in dark blue, is very low. It starts to rise after ovulation and then continues to rise around day 21 when and if fertilization doesn't occur, then progesterone declines and the cycle begins. What both these images show is that variation and irregularity is normal. It's not noise. Yet too often this variation is thought of as nuisance in biomedical research. So what I want to pose is that rather than viewing menstrual cycle as nuisance, we need to really think of it as a sign of health and disease, and for the context of this, how we can leverage this variation for productivity. So menstruation is the fifth vital sign of health, which means that clinicians should track and ask menstruators about their menstruation just as much as they ask about heart rate, blood pressure, pulse, and body temperature. And this is because menstrual cycle characteristics outside of norms or when they drastically change for an individual can indicate underlying health issues. And so if menstruators can track their cycles and know what's normal for them, and when things change, then this can really be an early sign of something underlying like polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, and either chronic diseases such as breast cancer. And what really, we need more preventative health so that we have healthy menstruators that make healthy workforce. However, there are many barriers to menstruators embracing menstrual health. And menstrual stigma is a major player around the world, and it manifests in different ways. However, it leads to many blind spots as well as at health and at work, no matter where menstruators live. So stigma means we focus too much on the bleeding phase of the menstrual cycle and the underlying pathologies. It means that we see the cycle as too noisy, as menstruators as too hormonal. And when we don't understand women's health, we often say it must be the hormones without really understanding the underlying biological mechanisms. And menstrual stigma is one source of discrimination of women in the workplace. So many of you may remember when the former US President Donald Trump harassed Megyn Kelly in her own place of work, attributing her demeanor to her period. So one antidote to menstrual stigma can be found within the holistic movement, which pushes menstruators to embrace the good parts of their cycle. So this movement actually promotes natural cycles, which means menstruators not taking any medication. And I think this is a downside because it overlooks the benefits that contraception, or hormonal contraception, has offered women throughout history. But it does offer some good insights about how we can embrace the good parts of the cycle. So Nicole Houghton is an author in this space. And this is a screenshot from her Instagram. And what she's trying to illustrate is that the daily rise and fall of testosterone among men really aligns with the 9-to-5 work schedule that's kind of standard. However, the 28-day fluctuations in women's hormones doesn't really align with this work schedule. And so it's not really designed to allow women to thrive. So what Nicole, as well as Elisa Vitti, another author in this space, promotes is cycle syncing. And this is the idea of really syncing your lifestyle with the phase of your cycle. So they make recommendations like eating certain foods during certain phases of your cycle, scheduling downtime during phases when you know you have less energy. And my favorite is even asking for a raise when you're ovulating, because this is a time when a lot of women feel powerful, and to kind of really leverage that period. And so if I can say for my own work, I really find that I write better during my follicular phase, and I do a lot better administrative and like analytical work during my luteal phase. So I have learned to kind of work around my cycle. So a way that that menstruators can really implement cycle syncing and tracking their menstruation as a vital sign is through menstrual tracking. So there are menstrual tracking apps are available on all sorts of phones, and there are many different flavors. And what they are good for is that they allow women to track periods, the periods of bleeding, as well as fluctuations in mood, energy, cravings, and they allow you to find patterns that are unique to you and may or may not sync with your menstrual cycle. And some of these apps partner with researchers like myself, which allow us to analyze your data along with millions of other women's, and so that we can actually fill gaps in the understandings of menstrual cycle and women's health. Period tracking can also help teams perform better. So the USA women's soccer team attributes period tracking to helping them win, one factor in helping them win the World Cup in 2019. So players filled out comprehensive surveys about their periods, and then Dr. Georgie Brunvels took that data and sent the coach, Dawn Scott, a profile of each player with the exact menstrual cycles for each player over the 50 days the team was together in France for the World Cup. They were able to optimize their training around specific players' cycles. And then during the actual World Cup, they made posters or in the lodging that reminded the players of the different phases they were in and how to treat themselves accordingly. So we know that it can help teams perform better. And then at the employer level, one option is to offer menstrual leave. There are menstrual leave policies that exist across the globe in places like Japan, Taiwan, China, South Korea, Indonesia, Zambia, and Mexico, and most recently Spain. However, there are proposed pros and cons of this idea of menstrual leave, which is a policy option that provides employees with time off during menstruation. So the fact is, there are pros and there are cons, but really there's a paucity of research around this. And so some argue that we really need to investigate the impacts of these policies on menstruators, and that possibly without addressing underlying sexist beliefs and attitudes, as well as gender discrimination, that the menstrual leave could have negative effects on menstruation. And so we really need more research in this area. In my last few seconds, I just wanted to give a few takeaways. For employees, really consider using menstrual tracking. This can help if you find your own patterns of power and productivity across a menstrual cycle, and it can help you really track your fifth vital sign of health, and it's for early detection of underlying problems if you may have them. And really, this is also a call for all menstruators to be citizen scientists. So, after the overturning of Roe and Wade here in the US, there have been many social media calls to stop using menstrual tracking apps. And I would like to put out an alternative to deleting one's app, and that is to protest through using your app. As I started this presentation, I noted that menstruation is understudied. So while using an app is a personal choice and context dependent, I want to highlight its benefits. It allows individuals to be more self-aware of your own health and productivity. It allows you to have data of one that can help you self-advocate in medical settings. And then it also can allow you to help contribute data to the larger population to help us understand more issues around menstrual equity. And then lastly, for employers, it's really important to put in place equitable policies for your employees. We need health insurance that covers the full spectrum of preventative and reproductive health. And one thing to consider is the paid subscriptions for the health-based menstrual tracking apps to help your employees track and find their periods of power and productivity. And then one other thing is to consider providing free menstrual products and toilets in your facilities. This really has helped, I think, lead to some destigmatization here at Columbia. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share some of the menstrual health research that myself and others are doing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lauren. Very, very brilliant insights. And yeah, thank you for sharing your research with us. Please, everyone, if you have any comments or questions, do not forget our Q&A box is open, so you can post your questions there, and you can also post your comments in the chat box. We will get to this at the end of the webinar. Now, on to our next presenter. We have Pooja Singh. Pooja Singh is the General Manager, Human Resource for PSI India Private Limited. She's an experienced and strategic HR professional with over 18 years of experience in operations, talent acquisition, learning and development, organization development, employee engagement, and compensation and benefits administration. So Pooja is going to share with us how we can normalize menstruation in the workplace to create a safe and supportive environment for people who menstruate, and also how employers can support their employees to be more productive by achieving menstrual equity. Pooja, please, you're welcome to take the floor.
Thank you so much, all.
Pooja?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and very warm welcome. Thank you so much. Namaste from PSI India. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. So I would just like to share a few things, how to normalize, means saying on the topic, the normalizing menstruation at the workplace. It can help create a safe and supportive environment for everyone. Because menstruation is a natural bodily function that affects approximately half of the world's population. And yet it has been long been stigmatized. I was reading somewhere that on any given day, more than 300 million women worldwide are menstruating. And as we know that nowadays there are growing workflows, women are working at workplace. So it is very much required that we should inculcate these things during our workspace. So I just would like to share one of the experience of PSI India, which we have intervened. So we have introduced a menstrual leave policy last year, and little bit background why it came as a thought. I can give my example. Actually, during my menstruation days, I was I don't felt that comfortable, lot of pain and hormonal change. And being in HR, I thought, and when I get to know the surveys, I have done a few of the female colleagues, how they felt like if they come to office and they are having that issues. And speaking to the management, and management then approved. So the point is like, my thing is like how to go about that. First is there has to be one initiator. There have been people I've seen that there are so many male colleagues in overall there in HR. So somehow during my 18 years of journey, this is not the first time I have proposed this policy and management has approved. Few years back also, it had came to my mind and been placed to the management, but somehow people were not ready to accept that, because menstrual leave is not a norm in India, not in the development sector, nobody is allowing such kind of leave. So it was a difficult journey to go and get approval, seek permissions at whether we should. Obviously, there were some hitbacks from the senior management also, and from the male colleagues especially. Because as the previous speaker mentioned, there are pros and cons when we implement such policies. Because I have got few feedbacks that one side we speak of gender equality, and then one side we are giving this privilege to female staff of allowing 2 days menstrual leave. How do you justify gender equality in that? So difficult situation and tough questions are coming from team. Even though if I share my experience and my journey of implementing this policy, it's been a year, how organization, female staff and male staff are taking that thing. Obviously, it's a benefit for the female staff. All are happily accepting this thing that there is a menstrual policy. And because we are working for females, women, so we should also address our own staff also first. From other details, there have been people who are not that, means acceptance is very low still. There are female supervisors who are not allowing their female subordinates to take such kind of leaves. So there have been a long journey. I think it is a only little step towards going towards this thing, understanding the female health, and especially on the menstruation. It's a long way to go. I know creating a policy and implementing the policy will resolve all the issues, but yeah, somewhere, some point we have to start. So I think that implementing this policy at this level is a start for PSI actually, and let's see how the journey goes on. And other things which we have implemented, these are the few things like providing a menstruing products in the toilets, creating a space where if any female want to take rest or something for a few hours. So such kind of things which we have initiated during this course of action while implementing the menstrual leave. So menstrual leave is, we are allowing 2 days a month to any female, and they just have to seek permission. So they were, one thing I just would like to share, one thing, when we implemented this policy, many female staff came to me that why you are naming that as a menstrual leave. Can we rename at some other leave, like relax relief or something, or a sick leave, or can you add it to sick leave? Because they were not even confident that if we want to apply for a menstrual leave, and how their supervisor, who are the male colleagues, will take into the consideration. So these are few things which I think there are pros and cons. People are still not comfortable applying for the leaves. Few people are comfortable. So as I said, this is a journey. We have stepped on that journey, and let's see how the road goes on. Thank you so much for giving me opportunity. I would look forward to any questions from any of the person.
Thank you very much, Pooja, for the good example of you implementing a period positive workplace. I think it's as you've described it, I mean, this is something that most companies can achieve very easily without turning the entire business inside out, you know? Yeah. To the next speaker, I would like to invite Neville Okwaro. He is a menstrual health champion, and he supported the Ministry of Health WASH Hub in strengthening WASH and menstrual health gaps in Kenya. He's been involved in WASH activities in 47 counties in Kenya and a big part of Sub-Saharan Africa and Asia in different coalitions and collaborative councils and measure groups. He has also served as a steering committee member for WASH Pulse at the workplace study conducted in Kenya, advising on issues of policy. Mr. Neville Okwaro is going to tell us why it's important and give us a brief teaser on the Period Positive Workplace Initiative. The floor is yours, Neville.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Allow me just to share my brief experience having implemented menstrual hygiene management for about 10 years now. In Kenya, we started off as an initiative that was more focused on products. And the government never wanted to get involved into matters of menstrual hygiene management simply because it was felt it is more geared towards products which was not sustainable. And we've seen it grow from that point to a point that we looked at development of a policy, a standalone policy for menstrual hygiene management. We've looked at some of the work that we've done be it within the paradigms of trying to sensitize the community, trying to fight and demystify the stigma and the taboos that exist when it comes to matters of menstruation and menstrual health and hygiene. And there has been uptake, yes, but one of the things that we've really been lacking, even while we speak about matters of menstrual health and hygiene, has been the private sector involvement in this important subject. We've been trying to demystify the myths and the taboos, yes, but the next thing you're asked, where do we get these products? And the products, government cannot manufacture these products, so you have to go to the private sector. And that is basically some of the work that you're currently engaging in. And through a USAID study that was conducted in Kenya, there is a very big opportunity for increase in revenue, especially when you've met matters of menstrual hygiene management. During that study, I participated in that study, and one of the things that we wanted to do was to look at what if you are able to improve the wash facilities for the working women? What if you are able to get them involved in matters, or their supervisors involved in their matters, so that we are able to they're actually able to know more about menstruation, how it happens, and for it not to be seen more as a disease, because that is what we got, and something that only has to do with women. So in the long run, we are able to fight matters of absenteeism and also presenteeism. We are also able to see an increase in revenue for these companies. And that brings me down then to what is this period poverty, a period positive campaign. There is a very good opportunity that presents itself when companies are going to improve the working conditions of women within their workplaces. Here comes a case that women will come to work, but simply because of the fact that they are supposed to be in work. They are in work, yes, but their mind is not there because they're having their periods. They do not even know how to manage their periods. And even if they got an opportunity to manage their periods, some might have challenges in management because maybe that particular day of the month, their periods might be painful. So it's actually important to consider how then do we improve the working conditions of women by improving their menstrual management practices. And also, how do we ensure that these enablers that are beneficial to them, such as disposal facilities, such as supervisors, men and women who are able to support them during this particular process, how do we ensure that women are also able to comfortably request for leave when they feel that for this particular day, I'm not able to work? And that is why we all request for you to join this campaign, a campaign that is geared not only to improve the working conditions of women, but also we'll see an increase in revenues and also see an increase in self-efficacy for these women. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Neville. That was a nice, concise way of explaining our period positive workplace campaign and the importance of period positive workplaces. To the audience, I know some of you are wondering how to get to a period positive workplace. We will share information at the end of this webinar. And for now, we are running out of time, so we have our last speaker, Saraya Toronto. Saraya Toronto, she is the Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer at Morgan Stanley in Salt Lake, USA. She oversees people initiatives, giving back, strategy, communications, and business management. Morgan Stanley is one of the organizations that is committed to implementing the period positive workplace. So it's our best example as they're implementing it in all their offices across the globe, 6 continents. So I'd like to welcome Saraya to share why they decided to commit to being a period positive workplace and what that means for their employees. Welcome, Saraya.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Today, I would like to share our story about becoming a period positive workplace, and I hope that it's helpful and maybe even inspiring. For those who may not be familiar, Morgan Stanley is a financial services firm. We have offices in more than 41 countries, and our 80,000 plus employees serve corporations, governments, institutions, and individuals worldwide. And so we're very global, but the story I would like to share was actually sparked in a city in the United States and in a state that some of you may not have heard of or know very much about, and it's Salt Lake City, Utah. I joined Morgan Stanley in November 2021, about 18 months ago, and I spent my first week in New York before returning home to Salt Lake. And while I was in New York, I became accustomed to seeing complimentary period products every time I walked into the bathroom. So I was quite surprised to enter the bathroom in Salt Lake the following week and see that not only were period products not for sale, I had to somehow find a coin to put into a machine to dispense any product. And this didn't make sense to me on a number of different levels. So I asked my property management partner if she could find out how much it would cost to provide tampons and pads in our restrooms with the employer bearing the cost. She obtained a quote via our cleaning partner's supplier. 500 tampons and 250 pads would cost about $130. I wasn't sure how to think about how many times a year we'd need to reorder, but I estimated perhaps 3 or 4, and that would cost a grand total of $500 for a whole year. And honestly, I was shocked because comparing $500 to the value that our staff would receive, it was just incomparable. So I quickly sent a note off to my boss proposing that we begin offering period products for free in the 2 buildings in my purview. She came back and said, simply, this is the right thing to do. And the next morning, my local property management partner received an email from her boss saying, this is approved. Connect with the building to implement and have them charge like we do for any other incidentals like overtime air, special cleaning, etc. So 1 month later, $60 conversion kits were installed on the dispensing machines in one of our buildings. So we no longer had to worry about where to find a coin. And in our other building, we purchased some simple baskets for the bathroom counters and filled them with period products. And I wanted to share with you the announcement our local women's network made to its members about this change, because I think it really conveys why this was such an important effort for Morgan Stanley. Our women's network advisor wrote the following. She said in an email, we are very excited to announce that both our offices will now offer free feminine hygiene products in the bathrooms. Feminine hygiene products are a necessity, just like soap and toilet paper, and we are proud to work for a firm that recognizes this and will now make them readily available without cost to everyone who needs them in our buildings. Small, simple changes like this can make a huge impact to creating a more inclusive work environment. Morgan Stanley has taken some impactful and important steps to support our reproductive health, from increasing fertility benefits over the years to extending parental leave this year. This is an important addition to those other initiatives that support women's health and inclusion in our workplace. And so kind of to finish the story and how we got from Salt Lake to global, inspired by one of our local partners, the Policy Project, I presented what I called the bathroom opportunity to colleagues who have responsibility for the few other buildings that we have in the state of Utah. And every single person said, this is the right thing to do. And so within a few weeks, all of our buildings in Utah, the state of Utah, were on board. And then from there, my boss, who had initially said that this is the right thing to do, she reached out to the global head of property management with my proposal that all of our offices globally also be on board. And the global head noted that many of our locations already offered free period products, notably offices in large metro areas, like I had experienced during my first week in New York. She requested that one of her team members, however, ensure that there was a plan in place for all 80,000 staff globally to have access to free products. And that was in April 2022, just over a year ago. So by October, that team member came back with the update that all Asia and EMEA sites were stocked, and all America's sites that Morgan Stanley manages directly were stocked. For the sites not managed directly, the team added period products to our standard landlord specification for stocking restrooms, right alongside toilet paper and paper towels. And so bringing it back to Salt Lake City, Utah, every few weeks I hear a comment from one of my colleagues about how grateful they are that our bathrooms are well stocked with period products, or I think the same thing myself. And I would say that this step has brought so much peace of mind to our staff and has really underscored what our leaders say about the value of our people and the importance of supporting them. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share this story. Again, I hope it's been helpful.
Thank you very, very much, Saraya. This is a very good example of how one person can make a big difference. And yeah, we've had the data, we've had real life examples of success and how they implemented this from our experts. And today, menstrual health in the workplace should no longer be up for debate. And this is why we are having these conversations, and we have our experts here who continuously highlighting the importance of this. I mean, it often involves fairly simple measures in the workplace and, of course, a mindset shift from the employers and the co-workers to create a safe environment for people who menstruate. With that being said, this was the last presentation we had today, and I'm going to open up the Q&A. And we have about 4 minutes to go through the questions. So I will start with the first one. This is aimed for Pooja. Pooja, there's a question for you. Have you seen any misuse of menstrual leave, as that has been cited a reason for not being able to adopt in many organizations? Pooja?
Yeah, so I was just writing the response to that. Yeah, obviously, as I mentioned, when we implement any policy, there are pros and cons. There are usage and misusage of all the policies. But if we see on the larger aspect, we cannot see that there are actually misused. But yeah, obviously, when there is a policy, over the long period of time, there will be few staff who will misuse that policy. But if we see the overall, what culture we want and why the organization is adopting this policy, if you are focused on that larger area, I don't think that little bit misuse, few people, 1 or 2 people are misusing that. But somehow over the period of time, the people will learn and understand the cause and the basic background about this policy. And I don't see that people will misuse, because it is actually there for good health. I don't see that there will be a larger misuse, but obviously I said, being in HR in such a long tenure, you will find few employees that they will find out how to misuse any of the leave. So yeah, but if we see on the larger audience, it will be a useful thing for all the thing. We have got the survey with the employees also recently. And everyone, currently female staff has appreciated that menstrual leave and the products which we have got available in the washrooms and the room which we have prepared for them for rest. Everybody has appreciated that.
Thank you very much, Pooja. I will take one more question before we finish our webinar. This is for Dr. Lauren Houghton. Is cycle syncing at all relevant to individuals using hormonal contraception? And is the hormonal rise and fall similar for those individuals? Dr. Lauren?
Yeah, thank you for the great question. So no, the easy answer is no. People on hormonal contraception do not ovulate, and so that rise and fall is not present. But oftentimes, like the point of my talk was, a lot of times in these studies, people taking oral contraception are also excluded. And so there very well may be different types of hormonal patterns among people that take oral contraceptives that we're just not aware of, because they're not studied like natural cycles are. And so I urge people that are taking oral contraceptives to still track symptoms, and you may find certain patterns that are useful to implement in your own lives.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lauren. Yeah, and thank you all our panelists for very, very insightful, brilliant presentations from all of you. Great insights. We've learned a lot, and I hope the audience have as well. Well, from the reactions, we can confirm that this was very insightful for everyone. Now, to close up our session, we'll just like to give a little bit more info on the period positive workplace. On my screen now, you can see the link to the website where you can find more information about the period positive workplace initiative. And you can easily become certified as a period positive workplace by following three easy steps. One is by providing period products in the bathrooms and disposal mechanisms. Number two, meet wash facility standards, and also record in your employee handbook and benefit plan or company policies that period products are available and that you provide a safe environment for people who menstruate. So please, you can register this website and visit it and get more information on how you can become a period positive workplace, or even share with your managers, etc., your network, yeah, to make menstrual health equity a thing in all workplaces. Thank you all for joining us today. Yeah, this was brought to you by Days for Girls and PSI Europe as a partnership of the Period Positive Workplace Coalition. Thank you very much.